varies between European countries, but for instance in Spain, there is a license for a hotel, whereas there is a license for a building of short-term rentals.
大家好，我是大仁哥又到了专家会客室今天来宾非常厉害是我们跨国性的公司我们请他们介绍一下自己吧。
Hello， 大家好，我是 Olala Homes 的 Stephanie， 那目前是台湾这边最主要的管理人。Would you like to say hi？
大家好，我是 Dror， I'm the co-founder of Olala Homes。
总经理跟Dror可以介绍一下你们到底是什么样子的公司？你们主要的商业模式到底在做什么吗？
是 ，Would you like to introduce our company and our business model?
So Olala Homes is a short-term rental management company. We're both property investors and operators, and we've entered the market in Taiwan about 2 years ago. Self-catered apartments building in Banqiao. So basically Olala Homes is part of a larger group called RINA Group, where we are active in industrial mineral businesses, real estate and hospitality. We are active in around 10 countries, from multiple European countries, Africa as well. We have some activity, Israel, which is my country of origin, and in Asia our first and currently only destination is Taiwan. We have in the group more than 500 employees. In the hospitality business, it's probably around 350 employees currently, so we're very much focusing on hospitality in recent years.
在欧洲里面，短租的市场它到底做了哪些事情？或者你们在短租里面，为什么你们最后会选择短租这个市场，而不是选择日租或像台湾选择长租
？So in Europe, short-term rentals are basically a substitute or a complementary product to hotels operating our properties with appropriate licenses, and we can offer guests stays that are short stays but are more adequate for families or for guests who require kitchen and other facilities that normally are not accessible in a traditional hotel. In Europe, our average stay, for instance, is around 3 nights, whereas in Taiwan, due to regulatory landscape, it was a little bit more challenging to find a building suitable for licensing as an apart hotel, so we chose to enter the market first, building that is for service apartments for medium-term rentals over a month as allowed by the local regulation.
我们在台湾在做租赁的部分，如果长租或短租，大概就是591。那以欧乐寓来讲的话，在短租的租客是怎么去找到这些租客？所以我想，这观众们就连我自己都很想知道怎么去找到。你们是怎么做行销，或者怎么找到这样的租客？是。
It's a very good question. Actually, most of our clients nowadays are direct bookings, not through OTAs. We still use OTAs like Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, etc. But they don't generate so much traffic for mid-term stays. They still do, but not as much as it is in Europe, for instance. We do marketing like AdWords on Google. We use Facebook as well. Nowadays, we also have a lot of word of mouth, a lot of recurring guests, a lot of companies that contact us. People find us on Google Maps as well. So it's a diverse strategy of marketing, which is a bit more challenging. It's not what we're used to in Europe, but it's performing very well actually. We're booked quite a high occupancy, can always be better. It works well.
我们的总裁讲到说，你们希望说鸡蛋不要放在同一个篮子，是希望能够多角化。
的确。
那未来在Olala Home 的部分，除了做短租的酒店式公寓，那你们还有是不是有其他的一些，不管是从30天以下，或者是30天以上的 发展模式吗？
是。其实我们一直蛮积极的在找一些可以申请旅馆牌这样子的物件，有30天以上的这种酒店式公寓短租的物件的话，有合适的话我们还是不排斥，但是我们主要还是会希望说也能够有这样子的日租的一些选择，有这样的物件的话我们也蛮乐意去研究的，因为的确这样子在租期的安排上面能够提供比较大的弹性。
OK， 那想请教一下我们这个总裁，那为什么会选择亚洲地区选择台湾作为一个Olala Home 的一个据点？
Well, it started from personal circumstances because my wife is Taiwanese. We actually met in Barcelona while we're both studying and working there. We have visited Taiwan many times. We got married in Taiwan. We had children born in Taiwan. We probably spent more than 2 years of our life here. So we found this market gap related to accommodation for people who visit Taiwan on temporary basis. And that's how we got into this market in the first place.
那我也想问一下，你认为台湾人有什么文化是你们没有办法接受的，或者是你觉得台湾人跟欧洲的或亚洲人跟欧洲人之间在文化上有什么一些特别的差异，跟我们的观众分享一下？
Well, generally speaking, I think Taiwan and Europe are very different culturally speaking. The business fundamental, I think it's relatively the same. Culturally speaking, when working in different countries, I've noticed even between European countries some cultural gaps that you need to adapt to. So I don't feel there is anything that is very weird or very different, but let's say that as a foreigner you need to adapt to a way of communication in Taiwan that is less direct. But even in between European countries, the level of directness is different. So otherwise, I feel that working in Taiwan is very convenient because there is very skilled people, very hardworking, dedicated. So I see more positives.
那想问一下比较私人的问题，就是Dror跟他的太太，当然是说在读书时候认识，
是
最后怎么选择一个台湾姑娘，当作是自己的妻子？
是。
那这中间里面有没有让他的家人
是
吓一跳？你怎么会娶一个台湾姑娘？
是
就跟他家人的相处模式可以分享一下。
是。
When it comes to intercultural marriages, there are a lot of complexities around it. From my perspective, when I met Michelle very quickly, my wife, very quickly I knew that we would get married. I've traveled a lot, I've lived in many countries, so it was quite normal for me to marry someone who's not Israeli or not European as well. On the family side, I think that we are lucky to have both of us, to have families that are very open-minded, it's still traditional, but not very traditional. Me personally, I was very welcomed by my wife's family, and I think the same goes for Michelle, that my family truly loves her. And actually my mother is right now here in Taiwan. My father was just here a week ago, and they love Taiwan and they visited here multiple times. So for us it worked out well, very well, I would say. In other cases it could be more challenging. So
一开始在台湾创立了欧乐寓，
是。
那有遇到什么样子的一些困难或挑战？那他怎么去克服这样的一些困难跟挑战？是。
So in terms of challenges, I think that first of all, any entry to a new market is challenging. I think it's very important when you enter the market and you enter it with a team that is competent and capable, then that definitely makes life much easier. We did feel some bureaucracy when starting the business, which was perhaps more than in some countries, but not necessarily more than in other countries. So it was sort of a reasonable level of bureaucracy, although always it could be better and simpler. We were lucky because we managed to have a very good manager that she's my wife's friend for many years, sitting here near me. And we were lucky also with the team that we managed to hire either through the normal channels of hiring or through acquaintances. So we were quite fortunate with that, and that made the entry to the market much easier as well.
假设我们的观众或者是有一些包租代业者想要踏入到我们的所谓的酒店式公寓的市场，
是
有给什么样的建议或一些他可以开始学习的地方？
I think it's quite important to find a good landlord to collaborate with and to get commitment from the side of the landlord, because it's quite intensive in terms of capex investments. So it's most suitable to make these kind of investments when you have relatively long-term contracts that you can have enough time to recover the investment and actually make a profit. It's very important to look at the size of the building. The bigger the better. This obviously requires more capital, but on the other hand, your overhead this way will be distributed on more units. It's very important initially to invest in marketing. I feel that it's also a good idea to mix more than one activity within one building. So we feel it's very beneficial for us and for the urban fabric where we invested to have small office spaces that we have with the hub, to have a coffee shop where our guests also enjoy, but also we rent it for events. Also, another point is to look at the size of the units, because over time we discovered that small units are still performing a bit better than larger units. It's advisable to have the right unit mix as well, and ideally, if possible, to get a building that is big enough to obtain the hotel license, where you'd be able to have shorter stays than 30 days. That's really a big plus as well.
那我想要请Dror，因为他们毕竟你们是一个跨国性的公司，能不能给台湾，比如说你们在跨国性看到一些房地产，能不能给台湾一些建议，那一些好的一些不一样的新的想法？
是。
Well, I think that in Europe, in terms of legislation and regulation, they have regulation that is governing short-term rentals. It varies between European countries, but for instance, in Spain, there is a license for a hotel, whereas there is a license for a building of short-term rentals. Hotel license is more restrictive and requires more investment in various facilities, whereas the short-term rental building license is not as restrictive. I think it makes sense to differentiate the type of licenses between a hotel and the short-term rental building. Allow more buildings to offer this service in a safe way, in a regulated way, also not to over-restrict. So even in Spain, that they have a serious issue with over-tourism, they still allow it because they understand that it's a product that people need. Sometimes they're not even tourists. They come for 2 weeks. They could be Taiwanese coming back to Taiwan with the children to visit family because they live abroad and they cannot visit for over a month. And these kind of guests, unfortunately, we cannot serve them, although we know there is demand. And at the same time, I feel that a building, an independent building that is used for this purpose, there is not a big difference between a 2-week stay and a 1-month stay in terms of safety, in terms of the activity that is being taken there. I feel that this is something that regulation-wise, Taiwan can improve on a bit.
其实台湾现在在这个市场里面大概也就7年的时间，那其实当然有多打对的部分是需要去再精进的。我相信未来的部分，我想台湾的一些在这样的部分，我们会给政府一些建议。是在新北市租赁工会来讲的话，Dror这边有没有什么需要我们工会这边有什么需要帮忙的地方？这样是。
First of all, having an association for an industry is something very important, to interact with your peers in the profession and learn from them, to share with them, to help when needed. I don't feel that there is a competition so much, because for me, more professional an industry gets, eventually it raises the bar and everybody becomes better. For us as a company owned by foreign shareholders, it's even more important to connect to the local industry association, which can help us with networking, because we have not lived here our entire life and do not have the networks that members of the association has. And also on the regulatory side, better understand and also to try and improve things. It's very helpful and useful to have a strong and active association.
未来的部分想要找什么样子的？你刚刚讲房东很重要，
是
想找什么样子的房东去合作？
是
在台湾的这个版图里面，有没有其他的一些规划？
是，
也许可以跟我们观众，因为我们观众都房东居多，
是
可以跟我们分享一下。
是。
So we are very happy to collaborate with landlords to create new interesting projects, a little bit different than what there is currently on the market, but we feel that there are also very much future ready projects. We do a lot of automations in our project. We try to give still excellent service, but minimizing as much as possible some of the pain points that currently exist in the medium-term rental market. We ideally are looking for initially expanding in big cities. We often look for locations that are not necessarily very prime locations where prices are already very high, but we're looking for locations that are a little bit more interesting in our view, like a bit off the city center, but still with good access to the city center. Banqiao is an example, but we've evaluated also other locations. Initially, we're happy to grow still in the metropolitan of Taipei, but we are also looking at other big cities in Taiwan in the coming years. I hope that we'll be able to replicate this business model to some of the other big cities.
各位观众，如果未来你想要就是做不管是酒店式公寓，或者是想要找大型的物件，其实就可以找Olala Home。感谢今天两位来宾非常精彩的分享，让我们了解欧洲的一些房地产的商业模式，以及包租代的商业模式哦。那我是大仁哥，
我是Dror，
我是 Stephanie，
我的用心你看得见。